Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 8 college football top 25 rankings. We're doing these videos every single Tuesday night. It's when you can expect them every single week. So make sure you go down there, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss whenever we upload a video. Like I said, we got these every week. NFL weekly picks every Wednesday. When college basketball and NBA come around, we'll be having those videos weekly. NBA season previews should be coming Monday, I believe. But, the NBA season starts Tuesday, so I think we'll be releasing that Monday of next week. So that can be something you look forward to. And then, of course, MLB content when that season is going around. Real quick, links in the description, as always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With all that being said, let's get right into this. Real quick, though, I apologize if you can hear it. You probably can in my voice. I'm a little sick, but I wanted to make sure I got this video out to you guys. Just to keep the schedule, not have to push anything back. So I apologize if you can hear it in my voice a little, but hey, we got to do what we got to do. So moving right on in to the number 25 team, I still have Oklahoma. Now you could argue they shouldn't, and I mean, there's definitely some teams you can make a case for over Oklahoma. I wouldn't call you crazy if you had them ranked above Oklahoma. As of right now, I still have Oklahoma ranked. They still have a somewhat close win against Tennessee, or a close loss against Tennessee. I mean, they were kind of getting blown out most of the games, so the box score does look a little bit closer than the game really was. They also just got blown up by Texas. I will say this offense for Oklahoma has not looked great whatsoever. Although, do I think Army or Navy are better than Oklahoma? Not really. So I'm going to keep Oklahoma in here. You could rank Vanderbilt over them, maybe, or Arizona State. I just have Oklahoma. I'm going to keep them in. This week, we'll talk about the Texas game real quick, because Oklahoma just got nothing going on offense. They got absolutely handled by Texas. Texas did start off a little slow, but that was because Quinn Ewers hadn't played in a couple weeks. He was knocking the rust off. And they figured it out. They won 34-3. Oklahoma's offense put up 3 points at the end of the first quarter. Didn't score the rest of the game. They're actually winning at the end of the first quarter, 3-0. But yeah, the offense got to do better. I mean, it's not even Jackson Dart. It's really just the entire offense. Jackson Dart didn't even play in this game. Michael Hawkins, it's really not his fault either. I mean, he had 148 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. The running game couldn't get going. I mean, they just really couldn't do anything. Had 2 fumbles. It just wasn't a great game. It is against Texas, so we'll give them that. I didn't expect them to go out and win, but I did expect it to be a little closer. When looking at South Carolina this week, though, for Oklahoma, I think this is going to be a pretty close game. I think they bounce back. It's at home. I think they win. Hopefully their offense can score a little bit more, but the over-under is 40.5. I do have it going over just barely. Oklahoma's favored by 3. I also have them covering just barely. It is at home. I think they should win. But if they are to lose this week, and even if they lose at Ole Miss next week, they probably drop out of the rankings here at some point in the future. But as of right now, I still have them in. Number 24, I have Illinois. I thought about dropping Illinois out of the rankings as well. Here's the thing, though. They still got the road win against Nebraska, which looks really good. Now, we'll get to something in a minute. They have a close loss on the road against Penn State. I don't know if you could count that as close. I mean, it's a 14-point loss, but it was a pretty tough, environment. And Penn State is ranked, 3 now in the AP poll, so this doesn't look like a bad loss. The reason I did move them down 2 spots, though, is this Purdue. I mean, you could call it a hangover game. You could call it a looking ahead game. Really, either of them would work, because coming off a physical, tough game against Penn State, almost lose this. They probably should have. They came back, winning overtime, 50-49. Like I said, maybe they were looking ahead to this week, to the Michigan game. That's probably what it was, because coming off Penn State, they had a bye in between, so I don't know if I'd classify this as a hangover game. probably just looking ahead to Michigan at home. And yes, this is going to be a very tough game. Uh, Honestly, I think it could go either way with the way the Michigan offense is playing. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game. I think it's going to be an ugly, boring game. Illinois gets it at home, which is huge, but I am going to go with Michigan. They've got a lot of guys that know how to get it done. I just trust them and their coaching a little bit more than Illinois as of right now. Definitely wouldn't be surprised if they win. Michigan's only favored by 3. The over is 43.5. I have them scoring 30 points total in this game. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I will say though, not Penn State, Illinois, tough stretch here. This 5 game stretch at Nebraska, at Penn State, Purdue in the middle, home versus Michigan, and at Oregon. If they, if I mean, if even if they lose to Michigan and Oregon, um, they finished the year 9-3 with this schedule. I mean, that's a success if you ask me. I didn't think they'd beat the Kansas. I didn't think they'd beat Nebraska. So, I mean, at Rutgers, I mean, we're looking ahead. This week, though, I think they lose. Like I said, I just trust Michigan's coaching a little bit more. I do have Nebraska ranked ahead of Illinois, and yes, this is probably going to cause some confusion, I guess. When looking at this, though, it was a couple weeks back. I know Nebraska was at home. You could argue, I mean, it could go either way, really. Really, what this is we'll see. I mean, if they go into Indiana and win, I think they definitely bump up. I think they definitely go back into the AP poll, especially with that at Ohio State game after. This could be, I wouldn't classify this as a trap game anymore, just because how good Indiana is. Like, I'm not saying they're gonna go ahead and overlook them or anything. I mean, they're coming off the bye, so that's really good. I think there's a real chance they win. Indiana's favored by 6.5. I don't like that. I think they keep it closer than that, but I do think Indiana wins in a high-scoring game. The difference maker here is that it's at home. If this was in Nebraska, I'd take Nebraska, but it is at Indiana. And Indiana, I mean, they've been playing amazing football this year. 6-0. They already got a bowl game wrapped up. I mean, that's a success if you're an Indiana fan. Curtis Rourke is one of those guys that's starting to make his name up into the Heisman race. He's been playing that good. So I do think Indiana wins, but I think it's a very close game. Number 22, I have Michigan. Coming off the bye as well. They got their game at Illinois, like I said against Illinois. Or like I said when talking about Illinois, I think they win. I think it's a very close, low-scoring, ugly game. If this was in the Big House, I'd feel a lot better about this. Like I said, this is really a coin toss game. What it comes down to is Michigan's got a lot more talent than Illinois does. Luke Altmaier's been playing really good for Illinois, but against Michigan, the coaches, I mean, it is still Michigan. I know they just lost at Washington, and I would argue Illinois is better than Washington, but I do have to trust Michigan. I do have to give them a little bit of respect, even though I would love to say they lose this game, and I think there's a very real chance they do. I'm just not going to go out and predict it. They're favored by 3. I like their chances here in this one. I think if it does turn into a low-scoring, ugly game, I think it favors them very well by a good margin over Illinois if that happens, and I think that there's a very real chance that that does happen. Number 21, I have Pitt, new to the rankings. We haven't seen them in the rankings quite yet this year. 6-0 on the year. They're emerging as one of those sleeper teams in the ACC. A lot of teams have kind of come out of the woodworks. We'll get to another one right after this, actually. But when looking at Pitt, looking at their schedules, since we really haven't talked about them, with Pitt, they do have a lot of close wins, which does concern me, but they are 6-0. You got to give them a little bit of respect. I mean, it's not like they're a group of 5, 6-0. They're an ACC team. They beat North Carolina on the road, not an easy game. They beat Cal, who probably should have beat Miami. They also beat West Virginia in the huge rivalry game. Again, not an easy win. So Pitt, coming in here with a I mean, 6-0 is 6-0, no matter who you beat. So we got to give them some respect there. But this week, it's gonna be or this next game here for them is gonna be a tough one. They're on bye this week. It's a Thursday night game though. It's kind of weird versus Syracuse. Syracuse is looking really good. You could argue they should be ranked. They're 5-1. Kyle McCord's playing amazing right now. Um, but yeah, I do think they deserve to be here. Like I said, 6-0 ACC team. You got to give them some respect. We're halfway through the year. They haven't lost, so good on Pitt for getting themselves into the rankings. When looking at SMU, this is another sleeper ACC team. They do have a loss, which is different than Pitt. But when looking at SMU, the resume is a whole lot better. I mean, you got the close loss against BYU, which looks a whole lot better now that BYU's pushing top 10 in the AP poll, top 15 already. We'll get to them later in my rankings. So BYU, that loss doesn't look bad at all, and it's only a 3-point loss. They got the win at Louisville, who was ranked for some time. Obviously, that Florida State win looks worse now, but it is still a very dominating win. I mean, they have a very explosive offense. You look at their points put up, besides the BYU game, 29, 59, 66, 42, and 34. I mean, that's a great. I was very high on SMU coming into the year. I think I had projected them to go 10-2 on the year. So, like I said, very high on them. Kevin Jennings is playing great as a sophomore QB for them. He's dual threat. He's really doing wonders for them over there. This week they got a game at Stanford. I do think they win in blowout fashion. I mean, yeah, SMU was the team to knock Louisville out of the rankings, and they did it on the road too. They coming off the bye. I mean, SMU is looking really good. I really like to see because I was a lot higher on SMU than many others coming into the year, so that's good to see always. Number 19, Missouri, moving up 2 spots. They take care of business here against UMass. Nobody really talking about them. I mean, for good reason. They just got blown out by A&M, so I don't think there's any need to really get too excited about this win. But they do take care of business, which is always nice to see. This week they got a home game against Auburn, only favored by 4.5. I think they're a whole lot better than Auburn. I know they disappointed with the Texas A&M loss, and you could argue Missouri has not looked good. I mean, only a 3-point home run against Vanderbilt. Now, obviously that looks like a more okay struggle game because Vanderbilt actually beat Alabama the week after. Same with Boston College. That was a very tight game. They were ranked at the time, though. With this game, I do think they cover. I mean, it's 4.5. I mean, I still believe Missouri is a top 25 team. Are they a top 10 team? Like how they were preseason? Probably not. I think that was a bit of a projection based on how easy the schedule is. And when looking at the schedule, I mean, preseason, I actually might have had them going 10-2. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finished there. I mean, they got at A&M, which they already got through. At Bama was obviously the huge game they had. And then home against Oklahoma, who doesn't look like they can put up more than 14 points in big games. I mean, it's a very easy schedule. Don't be surprised if Missouri, if they go out and beat Alabama, which I don't expect them to do, but if they do, they're probably gonna finish 11-1 and get in the playoffs. Even if they lose, now actually no, if they lose to Alabama with this strength of schedule, you're probably not getting into the playoffs. So that at Alabama game may actually become a must-win game for them. I don't know. We'll see. Like, I mean, what's their best win if they lose to Alabama? It's home against Oklahoma, who could finish 6-6. That's what a lot of people predicted preseason, myself included. So, yeah, and obviously if they drop another one of these, there's no chance. But I still believe in Brady Cook. I still believe in Luther Burden. I think they're still a good team. Like I said, maybe not an elite team, but definitely still a top 25 team. So I do think they beat Auburn here by a sizable margin. I have them winning 31-20. Number 18, Ole Miss. The first real big game, I guess, we get to talk about here. Ole Miss goes into Death Valley and suffers their second loss of the season, 29-26 against LSU. And this one, I thought Ole Miss would win. My mistake. You don't beat LSU on the road at night. It just doesn't happen. LSU just doesn't lose. Home, night game, big game. They just don't lose. It's probably the hardest place to play in the country. Uh, it Ole Miss now sitting here 5-2. Didn't expect this. Obviously, if they beat Kentucky, they're looking at a whole lot better of a chance to get in. Because now this Georgia game might be a must-win game. I mean, do they get in with 3 losses, 9-3? Their best win would be home against Oklahoma, probably. Uh, it doesn't look good. If they lose, they probably don't get in. Like Jackson Dart said post game, you got to win out. I would agree with him. But when looking at this game, it was a great game. Went into OT. Obviously not the best game of the week. We'll get to that, but it was still a very good game. Jackson Dart, 284 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Trey Harris looked really good as well, per usual. He's probably the best receiver in the country, in my opinion. We'll save looking at LSU for when we get to LSU, but I will say Ole Miss kept it close on the road against a very good LSU team. I wouldn't sound the panic. Actually, I don't know because, like I said, you probably need to win out here. So it is looking a little bit rough for Ole Miss's future. But, this loss, it's not a bad loss, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That was a very tough game to win. They are on bye this week, so no game prediction from them. But moving on to number 17, Indiana. Another one of these 6-0 teams that have kind of been making some noise this year. They're coming off the bye, so no previous game recap. Now looking at their upcoming game, I already said in the Nebraska discussion, I do think they win. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think the difference maker is it's at home. It's huge. But like I said, Curtis Rourke's been playing like a Heisman quarterback. He's got to be top 10 in Heisman voting. I think he is from what I've seen. He's probably, 5, 6, 7, 8 range. He's been playing that good, so good on Indiana for making some noise. I don't think anybody expected this start to the season. When looking ahead at their schedule, if they go out and win this game, I wouldn't be surprised if they. Can Indiana realistically go 11-1? Is that in the cards? I don't think it is that unrealistic. Floor at this point is probably 9-3. You're looking at losses to Nebraska, Michigan State, or not Michigan State, Nebraska, Michigan, and Ohio State. But I honestly think they win. I think there's a good chance they win 2 of those 3. I don't think they beat Ohio State on the road. Can Indiana go 11-1 and make the playoffs? Is that really what might? That honestly could happen. Now this is a huge game for playoffs for both Nebraska and Indiana, because if Nebraska loses, they're essentially out. If Indiana loses, they're also probably out of the playoffs. So this is a huge game, and I feel like people aren't talking about this game enough. This is a must-watch game here in the Big Ten. This could decide who makes the conference championship. Like I said, eventually down the line, who actually has a chance to get in the playoffs. If Indiana wins this game, though, they could actually finish the year. If they win this game, floor is 10-2, which might still be good enough to get it. I don't know. We'll see with Indiana. I do think they win, though. Their offense looked really good, and I think they get it done over a freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. It's also at home, which I think is a big factor. Number 16, Boise State, continuing to slowly move their way up the rankings. They have a little bit of a struggle game against Hawaii. I did expect this because far travel on the road, weird time zone stuff. They do get it done, though. Ashton Genty continuing to look like the Heisman favorite right now. He's got to be. Who else? He's averaging 200 yards a game and almost 3 touchdowns a game, and he's averaging 10 yards a carry still. Ridiculous. He's having the best running back season through the first 6 games we've ever seen. So if he's not the Heisman favorite right now, I don't know who is. They're going into the bye, which is always nice when you have the bye right in the middle of the season. It's a nice breather. Boise State looking like that 12 seed here in the playoffs right now. I mean, I don't think anybody else is really even close. I guess you could say Army and Navy, they're both undefeated, but they're not anywhere near Boise State right now in terms of looking at that. Number 15, Kansas State, has a very close win there, and they probably should have lost against Colorado on the road. I want to give Kansas State a little bit of a break. Colorado looks very good. I want to give them some credit. I mean, they have gotten a lot better than they were last year. Look at this game, though. Avery Johnson, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He didn't really do much running the ball-wise, which I thought was a little interesting. But DJ Giddens ran for almost 200 yards. He had another great game. He's been having a very good season. Colorado just couldn't get any, running game whatsoever. They threw the ball all over them. I believe Travis Hunter got hurt, so that's unfortunate for Colorado. I hope he's doing okay. But Kansas State survives on the road. They got another very tough road game. Kansas State kind of going through the gauntlet of their schedule here. I mean, Arizona was ranked when they played them. Then they got at BYU. Oklahoma State also ranked when they played them. And then at Colorado. This is kind of the last game. I mean, you could say the Kansas game, but they're 1-5. It is a rivalry game, but, I mean, they're 1-5. And then, of course, the at Iowa State game, which is going to be a huge game now that we're looking at it. There at the end of the schedule. When looking at Kansas State, though, I do still feel the most confident about them winning the Big 12 over teams like BYU and Iowa State, who I have ranked ahead of them. Just because, I mean, I don't know. Avery Johnson's looked very good. They got a lethal duo at running back. The defense looks very good, actually. And I think they're just a very, solid Big 12 type team. Big 12 football, they run the ball. I don't know. I think as of right now, they would be my favorite just because I trust them more than BYU and Iowa State. But as of right now, I do have to rank them behind both of them. Now, when looking ahead at West Virginia, always a scary game, always a tough game. Could they be looking ahead to the rivalry? Could they be hung over from the very close win where they probably should have lost? I mean, the pass interference. It was a whole situation. I do think they win. I think it's a very close game. I think they win 28-24, and they escape again. They're going to need it. I mean, they don't have their bye till their second bye till after the Houston game. They could use one right about now, I feel like. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop this game. I definitely could see it, but I do think they survive again and win. Number 14, BYU. Like I said, I'm going to continue to having them ranked a spot ahead. They handled Kansas State. Again, it was early in the season. You could argue I should have Nebraska behind Illinois. Honestly, if I could redo it, I probably should. That's probably on me. But, it's whatever. It's only one spot. Like I said, they're interchangeable. But it was early in the whatever. We're going to move past that. BYU has another great showing. They handle Arizona. They shut them down. BYU's defense looks really good, folks. I mean, they've only had one game where they've given up over 20 points this year. People aren't talking about this enough. SMU is ranked. They went on the road. Kansas State ranked very high. They blew them out. Arizona was a team ranked at some point. They just won by 22. Oklahoma State, now they have this week another team that used to be ranked. I think they handle them. I think they win. Honestly, this point projection for Oklahoma State might be too high when looking at it. I mean, they've only given up more than 20 points one time this year, and that was clearly a hangover game at Baylor after the huge Kansas State win. You could tell. I mean, I'm not even looking at that game really. because that was just a clear. But I do think they win. I have them covering, and I think BYU is looking like a very good team. One of the probably the surprise team this year, if we're being honest with ourselves. So BYU, good on them, moving up slowly but surely. Iowa State, I have making a big jump. I was low on Iowa State. I was one of the Iowa State haters. When looking at it now, though, I think I've come around on them. I've come to my senses. They have an elite defense. The most amount of points they've given up this year is 21 to Baylor. Besides that, 19 to Iowa, 16 to West Virginia on the road. I mean, they took care of business on the road against West Virginia. I predicted them to lose, so that's on me. My bad for being on the Iowa State hate train. They did start off a little bit slow in the first quarter. They picked it up in the second quarter. We're up 14 to 10 at half, and then in the second half just grinded their way out. Rocco Beck looks very good. He threw for 265 yards and a touchdown. The running game looks really good for Iowa State. Carson Hansen just had a 3-touchdown game. And they went into West Virginia and won. Very impressive win. Never an easy thing to do. When looking at the future, I think it's a very real chance they go 12-0. I mean, the only tough game, well, actually, Texas Tech and at Utah are both pretty tough games. I mean, Texas Tech looks really good. They get it at home, though. At Utah's going to be a very tough game. Those last 2 weeks, back-to-back, is really going to decide. As of right now, besides Kansas State, Iowa State would probably be the team that I would feel second most confident. Because like I said, I mean, we knew the defense was going to be elite heading into the year. We didn't know the offense would be this good. I mean, look at the point totals. 21, 20, 52, 20, 43, 28. I mean, that's very good. Better than I thought. I thought they'd have a mediocre to bad offense and an elite defense, but it's actually a pretty good offense and an elite defense. So Iowa State's looking like a very good team right now. This week against UCF, I think they handle business. I think they lock them down. They shut them down. I think at home they get the job done and they continue to win in their undefeated season so far. Good on the Cyclones. They could be arguably the surprise team. Although I did think they'd be pretty good. Number 12, Texas A&M, not moving. I didn't see a reason to move them. I feel like they deserve to stay put where they are. They didn't play a game this week. It's probably good to get off the bye after the huge win. I think they figure it out. I think they have already figured it out at this point. I mean, the Arkansas win looks pretty good. Arkansas looks like a solid team. Obviously, the Missouri blowout looks really good. I think they win 35-20. I think it's maybe a little closer than some would think. Mississippi State is 1-5, but they do have the home game against LSU. When looking at that LSU game, could that be a game where we see two teams playing for who gets into the conference championship in the SEC? I could see it when looking at both of their schedules. I mean, Texas A&M still undefeated in the SEC, so if they beat LSU, they could finish the SEC year with a 7-1 record, assuming they lose to Texas. So that becomes a game where you've got to be watching that, and they get it at home, which is huge. So I think I said this last time when talking about them, and after the Missouri game, they're one of those teams where they could actually have a real chance to get in the playoffs. Now, they'll probably need to win one of the LSU and Texas game. They'll probably need to win one of them. I don't think they get in with 3 losses. But if they do win one of them, I think there's a very real chance they get in 10-2 in the playoffs there. The schedule is very favorable moving forward. Number 11, Notre Dame. There's no reason for me moving them down to. It's kind of just two teams behind them, I believe, deserve to be ranked ahead of them. They didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I mean, they won 49-7. They took care of business. Stanford did start out up 7-0. I'm not really worried about that, though. Riley Leonard, another great game. Jeremiah Love, another great game. Notre Dame's doing their thing. This week at Georgia Tech, That should say at. Uh, is this a neutral game or something? Am I missing something? Because this should be at Georgia Tech, but I don't have it on the schedule or the upcoming game. So that is a little strange. Maybe I'll need to go in and fix that. I'm not. I don't think this is a neutral site. Maybe it is, and maybe I'm missing something because I also have their at Navy game as. I mean, that one might be a neutral site. I don't know. We'll have to figure this out afterwards. But when looking at this game, whether it's a neutral site or it's on the road, I do think they win. I think it's a close game, though. I think Georgia Tech is better than some people give them credit for. I think they were ranked at some point this year in my rankings. They're not a bad team whatsoever. I do think Notre Dame wins, though. Number 10, I have Tennessee. We got to talk about this. Moving down another 3 spots. They've moved down a combined 6 spots in the past 2 weeks. They were all the way up at number 4 in the rankings. Now they're back down to probably more accurately where they belong. I mean, we were very high on them after the first 4 weeks. Then they dropped the game to Arkansas, and they probably should have lost to Florida. They had to come back in this one. I get it's a rivalry game. Maybe they're looking ahead at this Alabama game. I mean, you could argue, but you shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a overtime win over Florida. I mean, Florida's not a good team. They've shown us that. So another struggle win. They're gonna have to drop down. Now this is well, it's not the biggest game of the week. This is the second biggest game of the week, though. Two 5-1 teams. Probably whoever loses this is probably going to be in a very tough spot to make the playoffs. Because if Tennessee loses, are they really going to go into Georgia and beat them? I mean, if Tennessee loses this, it's probably a must-win game because their best win at that point would be at Oklahoma. Unless Vanderbilt continues to win, then it would be at Vanderbilt, assuming they win all their games besides Georgia, because that at Vanderbilt game not easy. We saw what Kentucky did to Ole Miss. So Tennessee, if they lose this game against Alabama, it's probably a must-win game against Georgia. When looking at their offense, it doesn't look as good as it has as it started. Nico Yamaleava, he takes too many sacks. He holds the ball on he holds onto the ball for too long, and you'd like to see him develop, but honestly, I feel like he's gotten worse. Maybe it's just because the competition's gotten better, but he looked really good the first 3 weeks. Once it's gotten to SEC play, though, it's just kind of fallen off a bit. I will say the defense for Tennessee looks very good, one of the best in the country, but we kind of knew that coming into the year. I mean, they got James Pierce. I mean, it's a very good defense. This Alabama game is huge. They get it at home. It's not a night game, unfortunately, which does suck. But when it comes down to it, do I trust Jalen Milroe or Nico Yamaleava, the freshman? I think I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe. I do think when looking at these are two completely different styles because Alabama's going to want to score the ball. Tennessee's going to want to, shut you down, suffocate you on defense because their defense is their strength of the team. Alabama, complete opposite. Alabama's going to try to get into a high-scoring game. If that does happen, I don't think Tennessee's offense is good enough to keep up. I do think Tennessee slows them down. I don't think they slow them down enough, though. I think Alabama gets the win. They go into Neyland and take down the Vols. But this is a huge game, definitely. I mean, if this was at Alabama, I'd feel a whole lot better about this pick. The fact that it's in Tennessee really does make this one more layer and much harder to predict what's going to happen. Number 9, Miami, coming off their bye. I think they needed it because entering ACC play, they've had 2 very close losses where they probably should have lost both of those games. Now they got a tough game at Louisville. At this point, I don't think I can predict them to just go out and take care of business. I kind of need to see it to believe it. Louisville's actually a very good team. 4-2. They're ranked for quite a bit. Miami only favored by 4.5. I actually have Louisville covering. This is one of those sneaky games to keep your eyes on. But Cam Ward still looks really good, so I do have to trust him. I wouldn't be surprised if Louisville goes out and wins this one. But when looking at Miami's schedule, I mean, you got this game at Georgia Tech, at Syracuse, really the only tough games, but none of these teams are even ranked. It is road games, though, against solid teams that you could argue are just outside being ranked, but I don't know. This schedule looks very easy. I mean, we'll see. I'm assuming they win out just because of the schedule, but we'll see what they really got in store if they, and I'm assuming when they get to the ACC championship, because this next team we're going to talk about, Clemson, I actually have overtaking Miami. I have Clemson as the highest ranked ACC team, and I didn't expect for this to happen because Miami came out and shot up the rankings the first couple weeks. Clemson fell after the embarrassing loss to Georgia week 1, but since then the offense has just come together, complete full circle. 66, 59, 40, 29, and 49 points. I thought they would struggle. Not struggle. I thought it would be closer against Wake Forest just because it's on the road. But no, they come out and take care of business. Cade Klubnik has got to be up there for Heisman voting. Not saying he's going to win or he's even a favorite, but he's got to be in at least some people's consideration because he's been playing great. I think they go out and beat Virginia by a sizable amount. You could argue even more than this. I just don't, 38 might be too low. I mean, they've been playing that good. Maybe I would honestly bump that up a little bit more. But I don't know. What I'm trying to say, I don't think they lose home against Virginia. When looking at the rest of their schedule, what's the loss? Is it at Pitt? I mean, if you're trying to find the hardest game, it's probably at Pitt. Maybe it's at Virginia Tech, and that could be a trap game. I mean, that 3-week stretch, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, that's really the stretch we're looking at because the rest of the schedule is just very bad, besides obviously the Georgia game, but they did lose. But Clemson in a very good spot right now. We'll see how they finish out the year. Number 7, LSU, moving up 7 spots after their win against Ole Miss. We'll talk about their side of things now. I mean, when looking at this one, Garrett Nussmeier, again, got to be in consideration for some Heisman talks after this one. I mean, he played a great game, 337 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks, but Kyron Lacy ends the game. Another great game from him. He is one of the best receivers in the country. And LSU gets it done over Ole Miss. Honestly, I did think Ole Miss would win. That was my mistake. Like I said, you don't win a night game home against LSU. I mean, if I'm Alabama, if I'm Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, starting to get a little worried because LSU is one of the toughest places to get a win. Now, Texas A&M is fortunate where they get that game next week at home. Because if it was in LSU, it'd be hard not to pick them. But Garrett Nussmeier looks really good. Kyron Lacy, like I said, and the defense actually looks very good. LSU, I was hating on them the past couple weeks. They really just shut me up with this win. I mean, when really looking at this team, the defense is solid. The O-line's probably the best in the country. Garrett Nussmeier's looking like he's coming together. The receiving core is looking really good. I do still worry about the run game, and I still worry about the defense a little bit. But they're in a way better spot than they were after last week, so good on them for getting the win. At Arkansas, now, I'm telling you right now, this could be a game they lose. It's right in between. I mean, this is the worst spot you want to have this game. Arkansas actually a pretty good team. It's on the road as well. It's also a night game. Watch, if I'm an LSU fan, I'm getting worried about this game. You beat Ole Miss in a thrilling game in overtime. Congrats, you're high off the win. Next week you got a very tough game on the road against A&M. You got at Arkansas sandwiched right in between night game. I'm not going to go out and say they lose, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I mean, the books would agree with me. LSU is only favored by 2.5. I think this game has a very real chance of being an upset. Like I said, I'm not going to predict it, but I'm telling you right now, don't be surprised if this happens. I'm going to say they win, but, just watch out for that game. Just a little disclaimer. Alabama, another struggle win. Maybe you could chalk this up to looking ahead, but this is 2 weeks in a row now. They lost to Vanderbilt. They probably should have lost to South Carolina. South Carolina got the onside. They need about 10 yards to get into field goal range, and their quarterback just throws the worst pass I've ever seen to the defense. They gave South Carolina the game to win. They probably should be sitting here at 4-2 right now, with a chance of missing the playoffs. The schedule is not easy. Now, obviously, the Georgia win is going to carry them, but I really wanted to move them down. I just couldn't, because the teams behind them really didn't do enough to move ahead of them. When looking at LSU, I thought about it, but the resume still favors Alabama. They beat Georgia. That's better than anything LSU's done. That's better than their win against Ole Miss. Now, LSU's loss is better, but Alabama did beat Georgia, like I said. This week, though, we already talked about this. I think Alabama's going to try to get them into a shootout. If that happens, they're going to win. I'll tell you that right now. Nico's going to turn the ball over. He's not going to be perfect in this game. Even if it's not a shootout, I think the Alabama defense will be able to get to him, get some pressure on him, and force some turnovers, because they're going to have to get pressure on him. The secondary it doesn't look great for Alabama. That was a worry of mine, and I still do have that worry. Tennessee can protect Nico. Maybe he can get some explosive plays. Maybe this does turn into a shootout. And even if the Tennessee offense figures things out and starts doing that, I still like Alabama. They're going to want to do that. Their offense, one of the best in the country. Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams. They got the two running backs. I'm blanking on their names. Justice Haynes, and then what's the other guy? It's like Miller something. It's something. I'm blanking on the name. Oh, Jam Miller. Yeah, that's a great. Their offense is legit. I do think they win. On the road's going to be tough. I think they get it done. I think Tennessee's defense gives them a little bit of trouble, but like I said, Tennessee's offense has looked pretty mediocre the past couple weeks. So I do think Bama gets the win. It's going to be a tough game, though. Definitely one of the games to watch this week. One of the best games any other week, this would be the game of the week. We just have a stacked slate once again. Last week was a huge slate. This week as well. Number 5 at Penn State. We got to talk about this game. This episode's got to be getting pretty long. I apologize. There's a lot to cover from last week. At USC, though, they win. They come back and win 33-30 in overtime against the Trojans. The Trojans got to be the best 3-3 team I've seen. They are very good. I honestly wanted to keep them ranked. I can't have a 3-3 team ranked at this point, but I definitely did consider it. They looked really good. They probably should have won. They blew the game, and honestly, this makes me feel a little bit better about Penn State than I did before, because I didn't expect them to fight all the way back. It showed some resilience, and I like to see that. Good teams find a way to win, and they did that. Good on Drew Aller, good on James Franklin, really everyone. The defense really just locked in the second half, shut it down, and they came back and won, so good on them. It was on the road, too. You don't usually see that from Penn State, but they did it, so good on them. And when looking at the schedule, Penn State's got to be locked into the playoffs at this point, because that was the game where they could have lost and maybe sold their chances at the playoffs. But now, even if they were to lose at home against Ohio State, that's a good loss. and I don't think they're gonna lose another game. So floor probably 11-1, ceiling 12-0. They could very well win against Ohio State at home. I wouldn't put it past them. They looked really good. The defense is elite. But we'll just have to wait and see. This week I believe they're on bye, so no prediction there. But number 4, Georgia. They survived against Mississippi State. Now they were leading the whole game, but it did finish as a 10-point game. I would chalk this up to looking ahead, probably. I mean, Georgia was winning 27-10 at halftime. They were winning 34-10 at one point. Mississippi State tried to come back, but it wasn't enough. I mean, Georgia was up 17. Mississippi State scored a late touchdown to make it a 10-point game. This week, this has got to be the game of the week. I mean, arguably the game of the year. Georgia at Texas. I got it 1-4. AP Polls got it 1-5. It's two of the best teams in the country. Two playoff teams for sure. I mean, it's going to be a great game. All right, I'm going to just go right in. I think Texas wins. They have it at home. Quinn Ewers is back. Texas has so far looked better than Georgia. They don't have a loss. Now, Georgia's Clemson win looks really good right now. But they do have the loss to Alabama. Texas doesn't have a loss. Texas has a good win at Michigan. They have a blowout win against Oklahoma. I think Texas wins. I mean, it's at home. Now, the coaching matchup does worry me. Kirby Smart, I mean, is he going to lose 2 games in the regular season? Is that really in the cards? Now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, it's hard not to go with Georgia. But is Georgia all that good? Alabama hasn't looked great the past 2 weeks. Maybe Alabama's worse than we thought, and if Alabama's worse than we thought, then Georgia is as well because they lost to Alabama. Maybe I'm overthinking that a little. Right now, Texas at home, I just feel more confident. Texas gets it done. It's a night game. I don't know. It's going to be a very close game. I have Texas winning 31-27. They're favored by 3.5, which surprises me that they're not. It's not down near 2.5. Doesn't surprise me Texas favored, but 3.5 is actually more than I thought it would be. But this is going to be a great game. One of the games of the year, maybe the game of the year. Now, Georgia-Bama was a really good game, and we'll get to the game of the year so far, in my opinion, here right now, which is Ohio State-Oregon. Ohio State, I have at 3 at this point in this season. I believe you could argue, I'm not going to say it because I'm an Ohio State fan. Well, I'll just say it. I think you could argue Ohio State is still the best team in the country. If there's any team right now for me to bet on who I think would win, in my opinion, it's got to be Texas or Ohio State. I feel like those are the 2 teams I'd be most confident in winning it all right now. When looking at it, though, it's a 1-point loss to the second-ranked team in the AP poll on the road in a game where they fumbled the ball in the first half, had a special teams error on the kickoff, and lost the ball there in the first half as well. Gave up a whole lot of big plays against Oregon when they actually locked down and didn't give up the big plays. They were stopping Oregon. People aren't really talking about. They're talking about, Ohio State defense worse than we thought. If they just limit the big plays like they did last year, Oregon doesn't score that many points in this game. Denzel Burke was just being targeted over and over and over, and he was getting exposed, really. I mean, he really just tanked his draft stock. He got owned by Evan Stewart. He also gave up a touchdown to Tez Johnson, really just the whole Oregon team. Jordan James was running all over them. I mean, he was just the fact that they just didn't adjust out of man really just made me upset as an Ohio State fan. It was a tough game, and when looking at it, Will Howard played a great game. People are going to talk about how he didn't get down, he didn't slide. He did get down with a second left. If you watch, I mean, the clock's supposed to stop at the start of the slide, not the end. At the start of the slide, there was a second left by a good amount. I mean, by the end of the slide, there was still a second left. I don't know how the timeout didn't get called. Uh, Jeremiah Smith, the offensive PI, that was not a good call in my opinion. I mean, I don't know how you call that in that moment at that point in the game. It wasn't clear enough for me. He didn't extend his arms. That's what refs look for. They look for the extension. You watch the clip. He didn't extend his arms. He didn't push off. I mean, that's what they're going to say he did. Oregon, also 12 men on the field. It's only a 5-yard penalty. I don't know how we didn't think that was a bad idea. Now the NCAA is going to investigate that and probably change it because that was just an absolute brilliant move from Dan Lanning, and I'll give him credit. I mean, that's a wasted 4 seconds and made sure the big play wasn't given up to give up 5 yards. I mean, at that point in the game, you go ahead, but Ohio State was on the 30-yard line with 30 seconds left. If that PI doesn't get called, I mean, people are saying I don't know why we didn't run the ball. Yes, but that is what happened against Georgia in the playoffs. We settled for the long field goal, and we did miss, so maybe he was a little worried of that happening again. I mean, people really don't give Ryan Day a break. I mean, maybe I'm just biased. I mean, as an Ohio State fan, I feel like a lot of Ohio State fans hate Ryan Day. I'm really not one of them. You look at their past couple of years, they should have beat Georgia in the playoffs, who went on to win the national championship. They probably should have beat Michigan on the road last year, who went on to win the national championship. I mean, if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt in the Georgia game, they do win. Or if the kicker makes the field goal, they do win. If Kyle McCord didn't throw all those picks, if some calls went differently in that Michigan game, or if they just complete their drive at the end of the game, they win that game. It was on the road, mind you. And then this game, with all the special teams errors, the turnovers, the play calling, the clock management, the penalties, the big plays, on the road against number 2 in the country in the AP poll, and we'll get to where I have them in my rankings. On the road, 1-point loss, they probably should have won as well. I'm really not worried about Ohio State. I think there's a good chance we see this game again in Indianapolis, and I think there's a good chance it goes a different direction. This week they're on bye. I think it's good. Recoup. Get resituated. I have Texas at 2. I think as of right now, the team I have at 1, which you know who it is, it's Oregon. They have a better resume. They have the better win. So Texas at 2. They didn't do anything wrong. I mean, they handled Oklahoma. I thought it would be closer than it was. They took care of business, winning 34-3. Like I said, I think they win against Georgia. I think Quinn Ewers gets it done. It's not like he's inexperienced. He's been in a playoff game. I mean, he's played in big games. He beat Alabama last year. Georgia has not looked all that impressive this year. I mean, they still looked good, don't get me wrong. I mean, they still looked like one of the best teams in the country, but have they looked more impressive than Texas this year? I don't think so. Texas right now I trust more, but this one definitely can go either way. Georgia could go out and win, and then you could argue Georgia should be back to number 1 in the country. I'd probably disagree because they have a loss, and I think Oregon would deserve to be ahead of them, but Georgia probably jumps Ohio State in that instance, for me at least. They probably would move up to number 2 if they were to beat Texas, but you could definitely make the argument they deserve to be number 1. I mean, and if Texas wins, they probably move back to number 1 over Oregon, because now they would have a win over Oklahoma, Georgia, and on the road against Michigan. When looking at Texas, they're pretty secure for a playoff spot. I mean, they got home against Georgia this week, and then at A&M, final week of the year. They can afford to lose probably both of those games and still get in. I mean, there's a chance they win both and finish 12-0 and going into the SEC championship. So, Texas in a very good spot. I do think they win this week. They're at home. I think they get the win. Oregon, great game against Ohio State. They win. Props to them. Props to Dan Lanning. He's, like I said, the 12 men on the field was just a brilliant idea, and it worked to perfection exactly how they wanted. They got the big plays. When looking at Oregon, The offense wasn't very efficient, which does concern me a little bit, but I mean, they got the best resume at this point. I mean, they have a win over Ohio State, who's ranked fourth in the country in the AP, three in mine. Boise State is ranked as a top 15 team in the AP poll as well. They have a win over them, two top 15 wins, one inside the top five. So you got to give Oregon some credit. I think they deserve to be number one as of right now. Now, when looking at this game at Purdue, Purdue's known to do this after a team's big win. For some reason, Purdue's always there as a road game. I think this could be very well be a trap game. We saw this last week with Illinois. They almost went out and won. I think this. I mean, I'll say this right now. I think Oregon wins, but if Purdue didn't show up against Illinois, I think they might honestly have a real chance to win. I do think Oregon wins though because Purdue's just going to be worn down, beat up. But Purdue did look good against Illinois, so you could twist it however either way you want to. I do think Oregon wins, but I think it's going to be a very close game, a lot closer than the projections show, but I do think Oregon wins. But that's going to do it for the Week 8 college football top 25 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss whenever we post. Like I said, college football every Tuesday, NFL every Wednesday. And then once we get into the swing of things, we'll have college basketball every Monday, NBA every Thursday, and we also do MLB content. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go down there, subscribe if you are new. Links in the description, as always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With that all being said, though, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow with NFL picks.